Voice in the Word.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
Foreign Minister Ahmed Attaf was received in Luanda, Angola by the Angolan President of the Republic, João Manuel Goncalves Lourenço, a special envoy for the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune. Several associations for the defense of human rights and for solidarity with the Sahrawi people have called on a rally to be held today in Paris to reiterate their attachment to the people's right to self-determination. Several Palestinians have been killed in airstrikes carried out today by the Israeli army against the town of Jabalia in the northern part of the Gaza Strip. Those were the major developments. Now the full news edition. Good afternoon. The Minister of State for the Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad and African Affairs, Ahmed Attaf, was received in Luanda, Angola, by the Angolan President of the Republic, João Manuel Goncalves Lourenço, as part of his official visit as special envoy for the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune. On the occasion, the Minister of State handed in a message from the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, to his Angolan counterpart, to whom he conveyed his greetings and aspiration to continue their efforts to further raise the relations of brotherhood, cooperation and solidarity existing between the two countries further. During the meeting, the two parties examined ways of giving a new impetus to the relations between the two countries and to consolidate the bilateral cooperation and strengthen the regional coordination at all levels. They also discussed the most important issues on the agenda of the African Union, affirming Algeria's readiness to provide all forms of support to the Angolan president during his term at the rotating presidency of the EU starting next February. The Minister of State, Minister of Energy, Mines and Renewable Energies, Mohamed Arqab, will take part tomorrow in the 113th meeting of the Council of Ministers of the Organization of Arab Petroleum Exporting Countries in Kuwait. The meeting will examine several important topics on the agenda, including the adoption of the ministerial decision on the project to restructure and develop the organization's activities and the approval of the organization's budget for 2025. Other topics on the meeting's agenda include the examining of the reports worked out by the Organization General Secretariat on global developments in the oil and gas sector and the project launched by the organization, notably those relating to the strengthening of information systems and training programs. The participants to the meeting will also discuss initiatives such as the promotion of the circular carbon economy and examining the Secretary General's report on the organization's activities in 2024, as well as the decision to increase the value of the Scientific Research Prize to encourage innovation and research in the field of energy and oil. The meeting will also be an opportunity to strengthen the Arab regional cooperation in the energy and oil sector and to monitor global developments in the field. Several associations for the defense of human rights and for solidarity with the Sahrawi people have called for a rally to be held today in Paris to reiterate their attachment to the people's right to self-determination. They said that the rally would offer the human rights activists and defenders to reiterate their support to the Sahrawi people and to press for the respect of international and the law and the implementation of UN decisions on Western Sahara. Sidi Mohamed Ahmed, who is a coordinator for the Sahrawi diaspora in France, is having more on today's rally.
Nous appelons aujourd'hui à un rassemblement à la place République à Paris.
We called for this rally in Paris to denounce the recent position adopted by Macron concerning the decolonization of Western Sahara, a position contrary to international law. At the same time, we insist on the necessity to respect the decisions taken by the European Court of Justice and the international law, which call for the respect of the Sahrawi people's right to self-determination and for the respect of its sovereignty over its natural resources. On the occasion, we strongly denounce the position encouraging the French companies to illegally invest in the occupied Western Sahara territories. On the occasion, we reiterate our support to the Polisario Front as the legitimate representative of the Sahrawi people, and we also reiterate our support to end our call for the immediate release of the Sahrawi prisoners detained in Moroccan jails.
Notre solidarité avec les détenus politiques sahraouis dans les prisons marocaines et nous exigeons leur libération immédiate.
Let's recall that last October, the European Court of Justice issued 3 rulings declaring invalidating the trade agreements on agriculture and fisheries concluded between the EU and Morocco and declaring Morocco and Western Sahara 2 distinct and separated territories. And now several Palestinians have been killed in airstrikes carried out by the Israeli army against the town of Jabalia in the northern part of the Gaza Strip. The news agency Wafa said that several other Palestinians were wounded in the airstrikes that also hit the northern locality of Beit Lahia, as well as several districts of Gaza. Meanwhile, the General Commissioner of UNRWA, Philip Lazzarini, has held the adoption by the UN General Assembly of 2 resolutions, one backing the UN agency mandate and the other calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. In a message posted on social networks, he stated that the 159 votes secured by the first resolution were the highest ever recorded in support of UNRWA, so were the 158 votes in favor of an immediate ceasefire. In this respect, the General Commissioner of UNRWA stressed the necessity of putting a halt to Israel's attack on Gaza, stating that it was high time to genuinely invest in a political solution. He affirmed that it was time to allow in humanitarian aid and that to allow UNRWA, for which there were no other alternative, to maintain its relief and development program. This came as Israel's harassment and attacks on UNRWA was denounced by Saudi Arabia's representative to the UN, who reiterated that the UNRWA's role was vital and that targeting the agency must be considered a red line. The Saudi diplomat also reiterated his country's inalienable support to the rights of the Palestinians, while recalling that any solution must be based on the 2-state solution and the Arab Peace Initiative. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. The Arab League has adopted a resolution condemning the Israeli army's incursions into the separation area and neighboring areas in Syria. In a communiqué issued at the end of an emergency meeting held at Egypt's request, the Arab organization called for an Israeli troop pullout of the Syrian territory and denounced the Israeli incursions as a blatant violation of the 1974 Disengagement Forces Agreement, which it said remains in force in conformity with UN Resolution 350. In this respect, it urged the international community to put pressure on Israel and forces to abide by Resolution 497, whereby Israel's rights on the Golan Heights are considered null and void. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas and Lebanese caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati have vowed to work towards speeding the Israeli troop withdrawal from the region to enforce a global ceasefire and facilitate the funneling of humanitarian aid. The news agency Wafa said the 2 leaders stressed during a meeting held in Rome, Italy, the importance of implementing the decision taken by the International Court of Justice on the end of the Israeli occupation. The 2 men also agreed to convene an international peace conference to take place by mid-2025. The Norwegian Refugee Council has said in a report that more than 2/3 of displaced families in eastern Sudan cannot get enough food, calling for global action to help these communities, which are on the brink of collapse. Based on surveys for more than 8,600 households in 6 states in eastern Sudan, the report found that 70% of internally displaced families and 56% of host families in eastern Sudan are unable to buy enough food due to soaring prices and loss of income. The overwhelming majority of host families and internally displaced people also stated in the surveys that they had not received any food aid in the last 6 months. The Norwegian Refugee Council's director in Sudan, Will Carter, stressed that the towns and villages of eastern Sudan were already fragile, adding that the displaced and host communities are now on the brink of collapse, and the scale of need is such that it is beyond what the current humanitarian response can manage without urgent support. For the Norwegian Refugee Council, global action is essential to step up the humanitarian aid, rehabilitate essential infrastructure, and invest in livelihoods to prevent further destabilization. Mr. Coulter added that the world must stand by all those affected by this terrible war. The United Nations has repeatedly warned of a situation that has killed tens of thousands of civilians, displaced more than 11 million people, and plunged the East African country into the worst humanitarian crisis in recent years. According to the report by the Norwegian Refugee Council, health services are also overburdened, as almost two-thirds of internally displaced people and more than 40% of host families are facing serious shortages of care. The UN Security Council has decided to extend the sanctions regime imposed on the terrorist group Al-Shabaab until February 28, 2025. In a resolution adopted anonymously, the Council also extended until March 31, 2025, the mandate of the group of experts whose remit is to register all arms, munitions, and military equipment confiscated or seized from the group. It also is responsible for exchanging information on Al-Shabaab operations and monitoring the total elimination of charcoal stocks. Last October, the UN Security Executive's body decided that the United Nations Assistance Mission in Somalia would henceforth be known as the United Nations Transnational Assistance Missions in Somalia, and that it would begin the official transfer of its functions in November 1, 2024. And now South Korean MPs have impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol following his attempts to impose martial law. The impeachment motion needed at least 200 votes out of 300 to pass, but the opposition, which has 192 MPs, managed to shift 12 of the 108 elected members of the People's Power Party, Mrs. Yoon's party, over to its side. Prime Minister Han Duck-soo is acting Prime Minister while the President is suspended, pending the Constitutional Court's approval of his impeachment within 180 days. If the impeachment is validated, an early presidential election will be held within 60 days. The President of the Court, Moon Young-bae, promised a swift and fair procedure and summoned the other judges to an initial meeting on Monday morning. On the night of December 3rd to 4th, Yoon Suk-yeol decided to impose martial law for the first time in more than 4 decades and to send the army to Parliament to try to prevent MPs from meeting. With this last piece of news comes the end of our news bulletin. I invite you now to listen to our health magazine. Stay tuned to Radio Algeria International.
Hello and welcome to this new